Welcome back to Top 10 Awakened Insights. Today, we will show you our top 10 videos on awakening the true self. Who am I beyond the ego? Starting with video number 10 and counting down with Jim Carrey's awakening experience.
You see a lot of knowledge from people that have had NDEs, knowledge into the future, or knowledge into the past that they could not have known.
Another one is encountering people on the other side that they didn't know were dead. Colton Burpo would be an example of that. He is a 4-year-old kid who basically they thought they lost him on the operating table. His dad is a pastor. So his dad goes into the closet in the hospital and he is screaming at God. He's so mad. It's true of all of us. We're like, wait, I served you and you're going to take my son? What is going on? You know, and he was mad. He was angry. Colton, meanwhile, this 4-year-old, said that he was there with Jesus, and there were angels that were basically entertaining him while he was waiting, because Jesus said, you're going to have to go back. Your time isn't finished yet, which is a common thing that he'll say, is that you still have a purpose, or your time isn't done yet. He sees his dad in that closet yelling at God, and he when he comes back, he told them that he saw him in there, and that Jesus told him, we need to pray for your dad right now. He's struggling. And so his son was praying for him in this struggle he's having. I mean, he said lots of things. One is, he said, when he comes back, he said, Jesus had markers. His dad was like, markers? What do you mean? You mean like markers like you write with? And he said, yes, he had markers right here and here. And then he realized, oh, he's got wounds. It's like if you put a marker dot.
Wow.
So there's a 4-year-old's trying to describe the wounds in Jesus' wrists that near-death experiencers commonly say.
That's a commonality.
What Colton also said. So this 4-year-old comes back and he's talking to, and this is coming out over time, right? Because he's a 4-year-old. He doesn't know what he
doesn't even realize that this isn't
normal, or yeah. I mean, it all came out in the car when they're driving along, and they drive by the hospital, and Colton says, you know, that's where the angels sang to me. Funny story. He said, and the father's like, what are you talking about? And he starts asking questions, and he said, yeah, the angels sang to me. When did the angels sing to you? When I was sitting on Jesus' lap. When were you sitting on Jesus' lap? You know, that when you were yelling at God in that closet. You know, he's like freaking out. Like, how did my 4-year-old son know I was in a closet yelling at God? Wow. So, and then along the way, Colton said, I met my sister. They said, you don't have a sister. I said, yes, I met my sister. And she wanted me to tell you she's waiting for you. And then they realized they had had a miscarriage, but they had never told their 4-year-old son. And he told them it was a girl, and she was waiting for them.
They called a code and they come running in. I was above my body. I could see them doing chest compressions. I could see them, all the nurses around. I could smell the most beautiful flowers I've ever smelled. And then I heard music. When I opened my eyes, I knew where I was. I knew I was in heaven.
In 2019, Charlotte Holmes was having a routine checkup with her cardiologist when her blood pressure spiked to 234/134.
My heart doctor said, "You're not going home. We're going to put you in the hospital. We've got to get that blood pressure down. It's got to come down. You're having another stroke, or you're going to have a heart attack." They put me in a room and started an IV just to, try to get that blood pressure down.
Charlotte's husband, Danny, stayed with her while the hospital staff tended to her.
Immediately, they called this code, and everybody started rushing in. They just started working on her. And my feelings was, I thought, well, I'm wondering if I'm even going to be able to bring her home.
Charlotte began describing things to Danny.
She started talking about the flowers. Well, I looked around and I knew there was no flowers in that room. That's when I knew she was not in this world when that was going on.
Charlotte's heart stopped. For the next 11 minutes, she was clinically dead.
I was above my body. I could see Danny standing in the corner. He had backed up. I could see them, all the nurses around. Then I opened my eyes. I looked around at the beauty. I could see the trees. I could see the grass. And everything was swaying with the music, because everything in heaven worships God. I can't convey to you what heaven looked like, because it's so above what we can even imagine, a million times.
Charlotte says she was led into heaven by angels.
There's no fear. It's like pure joy. When the angels takes over, there's no fear. When you're going home, it's pure joy.
She says she then began to recognize deceased family members.
I seen my mom. I seen my dad. I seen my sister. I seen family members standing behind. I seen saints of old. See, they didn't look old. They didn't look sick. None of them wore glasses. They looked like they were in their 30s. But yet it says in the scriptures, we will be known as we were known. I knew them there, in their new bodies. They looked wonderful.
What Charlotte saw after that, however, shocked her.
Standing behind my mom and dad was a light so bright, I couldn't look upon it. I mean, it was so bright. But I knew it was my Heavenly Father. I seen a toddler. And that toddler, I couldn't understand. And I can remember thinking, who is this? And I heard my father say to me, my Heavenly Father say to me, it's your child. I lost that child. I was 5.5 months pregnant. I can remember them holding the baby up and saying, Charlotte, it's a boy. Then he was gone. So when I seen this toddler, I said, God, how is that possible? He says, they continue to grow in heaven, but there's no time. It's eternity. So 48 years, and here my child, our child, is a toddler.
Then God chose to show her one more thing.
God took me to the edge of hell, and I looked down, and the smell, and then rotten flesh. That's what it smelled like, and screams. After seeing the beauty of heaven, the contrast to seeing hell is almost unbearable. And he says, I show you this to tell you, if some of them do not change their ways, this is where they shall reside. I heard my father say, you have time to go back and share.
As quickly as she had gone to heaven, Charlotte's spirit came back.
I felt myself being drawn into my body. I felt the pain where I hadn't felt pain. I felt the sorrow. Danny said that they come running in and your eye blinked. And he said, I knew then I was going to get to bring you home.
Charlotte made a full recovery and was released from the hospital after 2 weeks. She has been sharing her story since then, in public appearances and with everyone she comes in contact with.
People need hope. They want to know that there really is something out there. They want to know that everything's okay. I have been privileged to bring people to Christ, as he asked me to do. All the authority that he had, he has given to us in the name of Jesus Christ. Not because of who we are. God promises us. He said, if it were not so, I would have told you. But he's gone to prepare us a place. Heaven is more than you can imagine. I can look you square in the eye and tell you for sure, heaven is real.
That's where I got to see heaven. No, Jesus and some angels came and flew me up to heaven.
And I said, so Colton, what did Jesus look like?
I knew that the first person I saw was Jesus. He was wearing white robes with a purple sash, and he just came down nicely and gracefully.
Well, Dad, Jesus has markers. Dad, Jesus has markers. I didn't know what he meant. So I finally asked the right question. Colton, where are Jesus' markers? And he drops his toys down, and he stands up, and he just points, Dad, they were right here. He takes his fingers, points to the palms, then he bends over and touches the tops of his feet and looks up to me. That's where Jesus' markers were, Dad.
When I was in the throne room of God to start with, so I got to see what that looked like. I was upset because I didn't know what was happening. What God did is he used people or things that I liked to calm me down. From there on, I felt better.
And one day we're traveling together, and he looks up at me and, Dad, you used to have a grandpa named Pop, didn't you? I'm like, yeah, he's really nice. Really? Yeah, you used to play with him as a kid and work with him on the farm and shoot stuff with him. And I'm like, yeah, how do you know that? Well, he told me.
A figure came up, and he was Pop. He asked me, are you Todd's son? I said yes. He said that he was his grandpa, so that's where I met him.
Yeah, Pop, I was very close to him. And he was my most significant male role model when I was a kid growing up. But he was killed in a car wreck before I turned 7.
I was busy paying bills again, because that's my job. And he came up and told me he had 2 sisters. Well, he had to say it several times before he finally got my attention. And finally, I put myself down and looked at him and says, what do you mean you have 2 sisters? No, I have 2 sisters. You had a baby die in your tummy. And I just looked at him like, well, how do you know you have 2 sisters? Well, she told me. And then he proceeded to describe her.
She looked like Cassie, but she had brown hair. And first time when she saw me, she just came up and hugged me.
We knew if this was true because he said, she kept hugging me. She wouldn't stop hugging me, Mom, and I didn't like that.
Well, I'm not really the hugging type.
I had miscarried the weekend of Father's Day weekend, which made it even rougher. And we thought we'd dealt with it. We gotten over, we accepted that the baby had died. But when he said he had 2 sisters, I think I was in shock first and then trying to realize, what is he telling me? And so I knew that he had seen her, and after he described her, and he said, she's just waiting for you guys to come to heaven.
You know, as we talked about heaven, and he was telling me all these wonderful details, I just felt like I had to ask him, did he want to come back?
I knew that I was leaving heaven because Jesus came to me and said, Colton, you need to go back. Even though I didn't want to go back, he said that he was answering my dad's prayer.
I remember that prayer. That irreverent, that disrespectful, screaming at God prayer. I was like, he's answering that prayer?
Today, Colton is a healthy 11-year-old and shares his heavenly journey with boldness.
I learned that heaven is for real, and you're going to like it.
Almost 30 minutes had gone by. Enough time had passed that they had shifted from a rescue mode to purely a body recovery mode. I could see this bloated purple body, and I never felt alive and then dead. I never felt conscious and then unconscious. I felt conscious and then more conscious. I felt alive and then more alive. And I knew that they were there for me, to welcome me, to greet me, to love me, to make me feel known. And I knew that they had known and loved me as long as I've existed.
Near-death experiences are told, it's not your time, you have to go back. So you can't leave until you hit your exit point. So even sometimes attempted suicides will fail if it's not your exit point. If it is, then you'll exit, and then you can stay and decide what to do next. but you've made an agreement, you've set something in motion.
Lost in our culture how to die, and we'll really have to get it back again because dying is so special. Let's say you're seriously ill, and then the deathbed visions occur. These are relatives. We took 100 visions and looked at the frequency of people who come, and the commonest are parents. We see very few angels. In the south of North America, in Texas, they see a lot of angels. The visitors come for a very specific reason. They come, in our series, to tell the person who's dying that they will be back to pick them up. So they give them a date when your deathbed visitors say, please don't come back then, because my son's coming from America. I'd like to see him before I say goodbye.
You can negotiate.
You can negotiate a little. It's really interesting. The first point you could say is that this is due to hallucinations. They're dying, brain's all screwed up. And so it fits none of those. It's not confusional. It's not like a drug hallucination. It's something which is quite different. Somebody who is dying, let's say their mother is known, as far as he's concerned, to be perfectly okay, but she dies. The relatives decide not to tell him, so he doesn't know. And then he gets the deathbed visitors, and amongst them is his mum. And the stories we have, the dying person says, what are you doing here? Why have you come? And then she usually says that she's dead. It means then that it can't be expectation, which is one of the other points, because these people are thought to be living. It asks wider questions about the nature of life and the nature of consciousness. Deathbed visitors say they come to take the dying on a journey, and it's quite clear and quite specific. As I said, the language changes. They say, when I go, when I leave, when I go home.
They're coming to offer help on this important journey, end journey.
That's absolutely
and
right.
Beginning journey, whatever's next, we don't know that.
And the other important point about it is it's enormously reassuring for the relatives of the person who's dying, the living ones, because the person who's dying always says, you know, I saw my mum, she says she'll be back for me and everything will be okay. It's very difficult for the dying person if their experiences aren't validated by the staff.
Yes.
And they know their dead relatives have come, they know how important it is, and to have somebody come in and say, oh, don't worry, that's only the drugs, it'll be going away soon. They feel absolutely let down and bereft. What they want is it validated. Yeah, those are dead relatives. They're going to be here to come pick you up. You're in the hospice. Not everybody does this, but some people do. And you go into another reality, and then back into the hospice, other reality, back in the hospice like this. And what is the other reality? Fascinating. An area which is full of love and light and spiritual beings and dead relatives. Now, that's very similar to the near-death experience.
Yes.
And it's made quite clear to the dying person that these people are there to help them through the dying process. And when they finally die, they will be looked after. Then they're back in the hospice again. And some people say, gosh, am I back? And then they will leave again and come back. So there is, if you like, a foreglimpse of what may happen. But it occurs in clear consciousness. It's not some hallucinatory world known as terminal lucidity. This is lightning before death. It used to be called that in the 18th century. They all knew about it. Have Alzheimer's disease, maybe, are paralyzed with a stroke, maybe, and are deeply unconscious. They suddenly sit up, full consciousness is resumed, and they recognize, if they've got Alzheimer's, they haven't done this for 3 years, they recognize their living relatives, say goodbye to them, welcome the dead relatives, so it's part of the deathbed visions, and then they lie back down again and die. Now, this guy's been paralyzed for a long while, but yet, at this time, something really interesting happens. It suggests that our understanding of the way the central nervous system functions and what the true nature of consciousness is not known properly yet. It shouldn't be able to happen.
Yeah.
And so what people say, if they're a scientist, the observation of what happens is faulty. In other words, it wasn't really like that. People are projecting onto it. What do I think? The whole death process, to me, seems to be a loosening of consciousness, and there are new views of consciousness coming in, with the deathbed relatives, for example, then the view of this other reality, then the way that the mind may work differently, and then we come on to deathbed coincidences, which are totally fascinating. We've got loads and loads of stories, and so we now understand quite a lot about it. And this is at the moment of death. The dying person will go and visit somebody who they are very closely emotionally attached to. This is, the mother is in Australia. The son is quite healthy in England. The mother wakes up and senses that her dead grandmother is there. That's just beside the point. Then she goes back to sleep, and in the sleep, and this is the deathbed coincidence, her son appears to her. He appears dripping wet. And then as he walks towards her, and again it's a sort of tunnel-like thing, he comes into the light, and what's the light? It's always the light of love and compassion. He comes into the light, he gives her a message and says, please don't worry about me, Mum, I'm okay. And she knows that he's died, but she knows that he's going to be okay. So it's a very supportive dream. So of course, the next morning she rings up the UK to find out how her son is, but she knows he's dead. And in fact, he drowned in a boating accident the evening before. At the time, he appeared to her, as far as one can trace it. But remember, he came down dripping wet. And so the elements of the deathbed scene come with them into the dream.
I knew I was dying, and I cried out, God, forgive me. In that nanosecond of death, I realized all that I had been given, all I had been blessed with, and I had never once thanked the Creator because I couldn't find proof of His existence. We talk about heaven is real, but so is hell. I cried out, God, help me, help me. I who should expect nothing because I gave Him nothing, why should He help me? Because He's the God of never too late, if you are contrite. I look, John, and these three magnificent beings are coming toward me. Very tall, luminous creatures, beautiful in every way. First one, who I later found out had been my guardian angel since my birth, since my conception. The tall angel came forward and said, would you walk with us? We walked down this beautiful 10 to 12 foot wide path lined with flowers of colors that I'd never seen. And I think what happens is God knows us each so intimately, He tailors our experience to the life we had on earth. So for me, when we rise up, I'm looking down on the holy city. He gave me an aerial view of heaven, I suppose, because I was a pilot. We came back down and resumed the walking, and I've always loved horses. The guardian said, James, look, and then behind a group of trees came three of the most magnificent horses I'd ever seen. And as I'm standing there, I look up in the sky of heaven, and I see these brilliant streaks of light going straight up. And I said, what are these? And the guardian said, those, James, are the prayers of your family for your soul, even now going toward God's throne. The angel said, every prayer you've ever issued, ever thought, ever contemplated, is recorded in heaven. And it's not to create an I gotcha moment. When you have your life review, when you cross through the veil and you have your life review, it's to help you understand why you made the decisions you did. But I realized I hadn't seen the tall angel in a while. And so I turned to look, and the tall angel was bowing very low, and he was facing this other tall, commanding figure. It was as though this golden liquid light flowed down all sides of this magnificent figure. And the flowers that were already in bloom, when that golden light flowed over it, they bloomed again. And that light pooled around my feet, suddenly this knowledge of who I was looking at, and I'm looking none other than Jesus Christ, the Son of God, someone that I thought was just a Jewish legend. And here I am looking at this magnificent being. And I realized then that what the angel was holding up was the book of my life. And it's no bigger than a cheap roadside diner menu. Mankind should have been my business. And I was just so self-consumed. And I was overwhelmed with sadness and shame. Jesus turned toward me. And he smiled at me. He smiled at me. When I looked into those eyes, and I saw such sadness for the way I had lived my life, but I also saw love for me and forgiveness. From that moment forward, whatever happened, I was his. When he smiled at me and I realized he loved me and I loved him, it felt like I was the only one that he had ever created. You know, there was that instant connection. And you'll all go through that. You are his child. You are his child.
I heard when you go back, you will tell people how important choice is in their lives. And here's what choice means. It doesn't mean what am I going to have for dinner. It means every moment of your life, you are making choices in your thinking. How you think about people, how you think about the story. Someone tells you something that goes against your belief system, and you go, I don't really believe that, even if you don't say it. That's a choice. And how precious choice is to human beings. You know, we talk about free will, but this was like more than that. This is like every moment of choice. A lot of times people think if they're sitting in a coffee shop or something, they look over and they see someone, and they have thoughts about that. Oh, look at that person, their coat doesn't match their shoes, or whatever it is you're thinking. You think just because you don't say it that it doesn't have an impact, but that's not true. There's an energy associated with that. Energy looks so different to me now. So I'm getting this lesson in surrender and choice while I'm waiting, and all of a sudden I become unhinged. And I feel like I'm falling back to earth, and I hear this. I swear I hear this. He says, good answer. Because I'm falling back and I hear, good answer. And I land inside my body. You know, I snap back in my body and I realize my lungs are full of water. What's going to happen here? What just happened?
When people have these near-death experiences, one where they're dying on a table and they leave their body and they look back on themselves, okay? That's something, okay? Right. Let's investigate this, okay? So, the test for whether you really left your body or whether you were hallucinating it is get some writing that faces the ceiling up above your body, okay? And they've done this experiment. And if you're floating above your body, above that piece of paper, when you come back to life, you should be able to say what's written on that piece of paper. And that is yet to happen.
If you get above it.
Yeah, if you get above it, correct. That is yet to happen.
Hope you enjoyed these videos we have collated for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel to see more videos, and thank you for watching.